Hello, all. Welcome. We'll give folks just a minute or two to get situated.
Hello.
Adam, Stacy, how are you guys doing?
Good, good. How are you?
It's a great day.
It's a great day. Summer day. I'm loving it.
It's the first time in about 2 weeks it has not rained here, so it's a great day.
Yeah, we've had a rainy summer. I'm in Utah. We've had a rainy summer here in Utah too. So I'm enjoying no clouds in the sky right now.
Nice.
Definitely supposed to get nicer here in Seattle, but it's looking a little gloomy still right now.
I mean, Seattle rains what, 360
Always
days
gloomy.
a year,
I was
right?
gonna
Yeah.
say I worked for a Seattle-based company. I feel whenever I was up there, it was always raining.
It's not raining. It's fine.
There was the best Italian restaurant I've been to in a long time is in Seattle. It's this little hole in the wall. It's Ristorante Macarena. Don't ask me where it is because I have no idea. But it's really good.
I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I'm writing it down for the next time I'm in town.
Not only do you get contract negotiations here, you get restaurant recommendations as well.
We'll just sprinkle them throughout. Yeah. Well, thank you. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you to everyone for joining us today for this Rev Genius webinar in partnership with Lexion. Today's webinar is all about contract negotiations, how sales leaders can better understand the legal process in order to help you get deals to the finish line even faster. My name is Rachel Cottom. I'm head of content over at Lexion. And if you haven't heard of us, Lexion is an AI-driven contact management solution that is all about getting deals to the finish line faster. So we're stoked to talk about this today. I want to go ahead and introduce our panelists, but before I do, we'd love to know who we have online so that we can cater this conversation to this specific group of folks that are joining us. So if you wouldn't mind jumping into the chat, tell us where you're based out of, tell us what your role is. Are you in marketing? Are you in RevOps, sales, IT? We would love to be able to answer your specific questions. Like I said, I'm based in Salt Lake City, Utah, head of content, and I'll introduce our panelists in just a second. Rather than reading through their whole bios, I prefer asking my panelists a hot seat question. So I will tell you their title at least, and then I'm going to ask them what is the most annoying thing they have ever had to deal with from sales or legal. So first up, we've got Adam J., who is the founder of Adam J. Consulting and who many of you might know from RevRoom. Representing legal, we've got Stacy Vanderpool, who works in a kind of unique position as both corporate counsel for Lexion and the sales solution lead. So you're going to see kind of how those roles interact in just a little bit. And hopefully we'll be able to share advice from both sides of the table from sales and legal. So Adam, you're up first. Hot seat question. What's your hot take? What is the most annoying thing legal has ever done when you were trying to get a deal through?
So I remember it like it was yesterday. We were working on a deal that was just over $100,000. We'd been going back and forth with red lines for the better part of 2.5 weeks. And our in-house counsel decided that they were going to pick up the phone, call the client by themselves to talk through those red lines and explain exactly why we couldn't do the things that they wanted us to do without anyone from sales on the phone. Ultimately didn't really end well. It cost us the deal. Yeah, wasn't a great day.
Dang. Okay, so yeah, we're taking shots already.
Yeah,
Stacey.
yeah.
No shots. It is the only time it's ever happened.
Okay, good.
One time.
Yeah, there are exceptions always. All right, Stacy, your turn.
Yeah.
We'll flip the question. Most annoying salesperson.
Well, that may be a one-time thing. I think mine might be a little bit more relevant and something that we see a little bit more often. But I remember specifically we had an executive meeting where we were going around the room, updating people on where the status of some of the bigger deals were. And it's, up to sales to provide the update. Legal does the stuff, but it's sales to own. And I just remember somebody just completely threw me under the bus that this deal was with legal and it was stalled there. And entirely not true. While with legal is easily the catch-all for, I've emailed legal, it's with them. I was still waiting on some key business terms from the sales rep to be able to actually start that negotiation process. So while with legal was an easy out for them, it was really on that sales rep. And during that executive meeting, my name just got thrown under the bus pretty easily. So wasn't a good thing going forward. And, just let it slide and work with the sales rep going forward to get that done faster. But with legal is easy a catch-all kind of spot for people to just easily say it's with us when maybe there's a little bit more to the story.
Yes. Yes. And that's something we're definitely going to dig into today. What do we actually mean when it's with legal? What can sales actually do when it is stuck there? What kind of terms can you understand? What kind of prioritization can you understand to help kind of alleviate that process? And then collaboration has to go both ways, right? So I know we started out taking shots. That was just for fun. Like I said, I like stirring the pot. Thank you, Adam and Stacy, for playing along. But really, both of you, I know, have worked on teams where that deals motion is just slick as butter. So that's what we're here to talk about today. Thanks to those of you who kind of jumped into the chat. Let us know where it is that you're joining from. Really excited to dig in and address your specific questions. So we will save time at the end for Q&A, but don't hesitate to comment throughout if there are things that come up. So let's jump in. First off, let's talk about the why. We're here to talk about contract negotiations. Why is that so important in your organization to get right? And how can the folks here impact this? So Stacy, I'll go to you first. What is it about contracts negotiations that is so important in revenue generation?
So I kind of want to make it very relevant to the sales team. Sales team cares about their commission. And so how are they going to get their kind of commission on that deal? So I think what's really important to recognize is there's certain clauses and certain terms as we negotiate deals that are impact whether or not and at what point you get your commission. And so those are very important to kind of pay attention to, both as sales and as legal, as we work through that negotiation process. And so from a sales standpoint, I think those terms, whether it's a 30, 60, 90 days delayed payment, quarterly billing, annually billing, free months, those kind of terms are going to probably help move your deal faster, but may slow your commission. And so for legal, I think it's our job also to help recognize those are the deals and those are the terms that may slow commission. And so we also want to be communicative with our sales team on, hey, this is going to get your deal signed, but just know how that impacts you. So I think very specifically on how that impacts sales, those are kind of the key clauses that you want to pay attention to. And every org is going to be a little different on what their sales leadership kind of sets that standard as, but that's definitely something that sales and legal needs to be on the same page about.
Yeah, I love that call out. And I'm going to come back to you in just a second because I would love for you to share some of those key clauses. Like, what is it that the legal team really needs to, the sales team needs to have their eyes on so that they know, hey, every single time I hand this to Stacy, every single time I hand this to whoever my corporate counsel is, what is it that they're going to flag and how can I be prepared for that? Adam, let's hear the why from you and then I'll go back to Stacy for that answer.
Yeah, part of it has to do with what Stacy said. When you're looking at it as a sales rep or a sales leader, reps commissions are important, right? We want to make sure people get paid as quickly as possible. And I think most of my experience is early stage startup. So it starts with partnering with legal and with finance as to what will impact a rep's commissions and what won't. I try to build comp plans that whether we delay payment or not, the rep gets paid. That involves a partnership with legal and with finance. But more importantly, Rachel, I think when you're looking at from a sales rep perspective, we have to recognize revenue, right? And the only way that we could recognize revenue is by getting paid. We can't sign a deal today, say we're going to get paid in 6 months and recognize the revenue and report that up. So reps typically aren't exposed to that side of the business. So it's making sure that they understand not only do we want you to get paid, but why legal may be pushing back on certain payment terms as we have, milestones that we need to hit, which require certain revenue recognition standpoint. So in that sense, we push back a little bit. And it's why and we'll talk about this later, but super important that you don't wait until the very last minute to start that red line process, right? And go back and forth. It really is a partnership that if you're working together, legal wants you to get paid. Like every person I've ever worked with from legal, they have never had the goal of tanking a deal. It's always been wanting to help, but at the same time, making sure that we're recognizing that revenue properly in a way that's not going to put the company at jeopardy.
Yeah, that's such a helpful perspective. I saw we've got some ex-founders in here, some of those folks who are really revenue minded, right? Thinking about those conversations with a board, thinking about, how they're going to be accountable to that group. And I saw we've got a lot of account executives calling as well. So those who are really in the weeds with this process. Maybe Stacy, I'll come back to you then with that earlier question I posed. For account executives, for these RevOps folks, what are the clauses? What are those key terms that they need to be aware of in order to help their deal move through legal faster?
It's going to be a lot of that stuff, anything involving payment. So what are your payment terms? When are we getting paid? Is there an early out clause? Things like that. Anything that the company could terminate that contract, or to the opposite, when are we receiving the money? And so those are the key things that you kind of need to pay attention to. When are they going to pay us, and can they leave that deal early?
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. I want to ask the audience now. So Gina's going to help me drop a question, a poll in the chat. But we would love to hear from your experience where you have seen the deals get stuck most often. So if you wouldn't mind just commenting live here, cast your vote. Where is the deal getting stuck? Is it with the customer? Are you waiting weeks on end for them to reply? Is it with legal in that inevitable legal black hole that we refer to? Is it with sales? Is it with you or with your boss or with your peer or somebody else? And of course, is it just floating out there in the abyss where all deals go to die? We'd love to see your votes.
Someone has the deal.
Never with sales.
No, listen, it absolutely can be with sales. We'll never admit that it's with us, but it can be.
Yeah, this is interesting. A lot of folks are saying that they feel like it's kind of waiting on the customer. Could be their counterparty, right? Could be their legal team that we're not seeing. Thank you, a couple legal or sales folks, for taking accountability here. We've got 8% who say it could be with sales. And then 16% with legal, 20% say it's in the abyss. I think that's relatable. I think we know what that's like. Well, Adam, Stacey, let's go to your expertise now. Do you see the same thing that's reflected here? It's most often stuck with the customer, then secondary stuck with legal or sales. Maybe Adam, I'll go to you first. In your experience, where do deals get stuck most often?
I've been super blessed, Rachel. I've had great legal teams that I've worked with, and very rarely have I had paper stuck with legal. I do find I do agree with this. I think most of the time, from my perspective as a sales leader, when we're waiting on a deal, our internal legal team is, gone through the red line, sent it back, and now we're waiting on the customer. And what a lot of reps don't realize or don't know how to dig into, because we're not getting into that purchasing process early, is there's this misperception that, oh, we're going to send over the red lines and whoever, is signing the contract is just going to sign it. No, it's got to go back to the customer's legal team.
Yeah, that's a great call out. Stacey, what would you add to that? Do you feel the same thing is true?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's kind of reflective. We were just having a conversation about this yesterday about once something goes to counterparty, how can we speed it up? And that's hard because we don't know their process. And I think especially when we're talking about redlining and contract negotiation with sales, they're buying something from you, the counterparty is. So they don't really have an urgency to move their process along faster. So your legal team, as corporate counsel, I'm going to move as fast as I can, but they're not really in an urgency phase where they need to, hurry up and pass this around and get this signed. So without knowing their process, it might have to go to IT. It might have to go to compliance. It might have to go to finance. So when it's with counterparty, that's going to bounce around to probably a bunch of different departments that we don't have any visibility into. But I do think that's the same with legal. When it's with us, we may also have that same thing. So kind of as my earlier story, when it's with legal, we have kind of a with legal as a big catch-all, but we have visibility to break down to see, is it with legal? Is it with finance? Is it with business review? Is it with a compliance team? Maybe it's out for signature and it's just sitting in somebody's inbox waiting to be signed. So I think those kind of categories, as it's with counterparty, it's with legal, and probably even with sales, there's so much more to kind of deep dive into that those are really just a really high level of where the contract's sitting.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. One, I think it's great advice for the RevOps folks who are here on this call to understand that idea of visibility and kind of breaking down the abyss, right? How can you, in your processes, build clearer attribution, clearer stages so that we know where it actually is? Is it out for signature, or is it just sitting on legal? Is it sitting on their counterparty? I think that's so interesting. I want to ask maybe Adam now to Stacey's first point around when it's with counterparty, it's hard to create that urgency. Is there anything that you've seen on the sales side that helps you kind of create that sense of urgency for the counterparty?
Yeah, I think so. urgency is like this great word we like to use in the sales process, right? As sales leaders, oh, you have to create urgency. The fact is, you can't make a customer want something any more than they do. You
Mhm.
can't make them go any faster than they want to go. But what you can do is from the very beginning of your sales process, you need to tie your product to a key business priority that has real, tangible financial implications to
Mhm.
drive urgency. Driving urgency isn't, Stacy, we have to get this done by, June 31st or you're going to lose your discount. That is not driving urgency. That is just running a crappy sales process.
I know the discount will be there next month, so that doesn't help me.
Right. But what you can do is very early on, you need to establish with your buyer, what is their legal process? How have you bought software before? What departments need to be involved? Is it legal or is it legal? Security, privacy, data, infosec, compliance. Legal is this kind of term, and Stacey, we were talking about this earlier, right? It's this term that we use that, oh, it's with legal. But by asking your customers, like, how have you bought software before? What does that process look like? How long? What are your SLAs from stage to stage to stage? And I think a lot of reps are afraid to ask this because they don't want to like rock that, but like, oh, that's their internal stuff. It's all how you frame it. And Stacey, I want to make sure that, this is a partnership, right? And we want to make sure that this works well together. I'd love to get an understanding of your process and your SLAs internally. And in turn, let me walk you through kind of what we do, how we do it, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm.
I think as we kind of talk about, and Adam and I were talking about this earlier about, expectation setting. It's both expectation setting internally with your sales team and your legal, but also with their legal, because knowing, okay, we're ready to sign. Oh, but now we have an RFP. Oh, great. Send it over. It's a 30-page RFP. Like that's going to delay your deal. So expectation setting with both your customer, your sales team, and your legal team, getting everyone aligned on the same page of what does this deal look like as far as a timeline, what documents are going to be required. And I think that also, that expectation setting with your legal team also looks like on our end, where do we know we're going to get pushback? What can I expect to have, terms negotiated? And I think that's a great exercise for both legal and sales to sit together every once in a while and look at your executed contracts and look at which clauses are getting negotiated the most often. Is that something we need to maybe be a little bit more lenient on? Should we create some more fallback terms for those clauses so that way we could just go ahead and automate those a little bit easier? We're not spending time redlining those because we have a fallback that we know is most commonly accepted. So that's a great exercise for sales and legal to do maybe every quarter, maybe half a year, but look at your executed contracts and see what's getting negotiated most often. Is there anything we can be a little bit more lenient on, or at least come up with very common fallbacks?
Yeah, I love that exercise for teams to do. Again, when we're talking about bringing sales and legal together, getting the legal team on your side and not creating an enemy there, asking those questions. What terms can I expect? Which clauses are getting negotiated most often? I love also the questions that Adam asked, right? What departments need to be involved? How have you bought software before? Those expectations should be set with the legal and sales team together in order to result in this really fast deals motion. I love that. Let's talk maybe about misconceptions then. Let's talk about some of the things that legal really does do in the sales process. And what are some of the things that maybe we think legal is doing, but they're not? Maybe Stacy, I'll go to you first for this one. What are some of those misconceptions you've seen around legal and deals?
So I think it does vary a little bit kind of by department, by company on like how you handle things. In my experience, most of the time, sales is going to be that interaction with the customer, and legal is kind of behind the scenes. We're really negotiating the business. I'm sorry, not the business, the legal clauses. We're leaving the business terms to the sales rep. That's kind of, what does that purchase order look like? What's that order form look like? What are you okay with doing? And then those legal clauses, the things that are going to actually kind of have risk to the business, that's really where we're going to come into play. And so, I think as that kind of draws out, knowing though that your legal team is happy to hop on a call. We're not going to, in Adam's situation, overstep and call the customer ourselves. But, if I'm dealing with, Adam as my sales team and say, hey, this, redlining, this is getting drawn out. We're kind of going back and forth and we can't seem to find a happy medium. Can you connect me with their legal? I'm happy to hop on a call and just show that, they want to get the deal done too. So it's not even that their legal is being adversarial. We're all really trying to get this deal done, and we just need to come to a happy medium. So legal terms, the clauses, the things that are going to actually, create risk to the company, that's what legal's going to own. That kind of customer interaction, that back and forth, we're going to let sales handle that. But at any point, I think it's, really professional of legal to say, hey, this is drawn out. Let's hop on a call and just try escalate this to a solution faster.
Yeah, thank you. Adam, I want to ask you the same question. And then we did have a question from Stephanie in the chat. So Adam, what have you seen around the misconceptions about what legal really does?
So what Stacy just said is so true. Like, we talk in sales all the time about, like, don't go back and forth through 100 emails, 100 Slack messages, just get your customer on the phone. And there's this fear of doing it. And we train for it in sales. The same applies to legal, right? So where I've seen that sales and legal interaction work really well is just that. It's, hey, we've been going back and forth on this for weeks. Can you do me a favor? I'd love to set up a call. The caveat, and Stacy, please correct me, because I was told this by an attorney that, an in-house attorney I had. If you have one person's legal on the phone, you have to have the other person's legal on the phone. You can't just have legal and a sales rep. You can't have a sales rep talking to a lawyer. If the lawyers are going to talk, the lawyers need to talk.
Yeah, I definitely would be a little uncomfortable if my sales rep came back to me and was like, hey, so I talked to their legal and this is what this is what they said. There's going to be a lot of like telephone there where I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. So yeah, I'm happy to always hop in the call with counterparty and just, get to a solution faster. And I think it makes sense to even at that point, still have your sales rep. I generally bring my sales rep on the calls with their legal because they're the one that's doing kind of the business term. In our case, legal is generally our buyer as well. But, whoever your two buyers are with your two legal teams, make sure everyone's on the same page is really kind of the best way to get there.
I agree. I try to, when we talk about what legal does and doesn't do, I think at the end of the day, what legal is trying to do is, and you have to have this mindset, legal is trying to help you close your deal as fast as you can while protecting the business. And when you have that mindset versus, legal saying no just because legal doesn't want to block your deal. That's the last thing they want to do. And by working with legal early and aligning on what changes, maybe might be super easy to agree to, that's just a standard, yes, we can take that red line with no problem, versus the ones that are like, no, this absolutely has to be looked at, by counsel. You're going to eliminate a lot of that back and forth time and get your deals closed faster.
Yeah, we definitely internally try to kind of automate and let our sales reps handle whatever that they can on their own. That's low risk, low value. NDAs are a great one. Can they easily go ahead, fill out an intake form, have it populate the document? They can send it out. I know that I've approved those terms. They're not changing anything. Anything that I can take off my plate that I know is low risk to the company, it has the approved terms. I want my sales team to own that. Like, very confident. You guys can handle that. Get that out the door. Less work for me. Then bring the stuff to me that has the big risk, the big dollar value, the big risk to the company. That's where I want to get involved in.
So you're okay if we remove auto renew.
There's a question from John, I think that's related to this. He says, I've found that legal can be a very broad term, like we've been talking about. Can you clarify some of the different roles and responsibilities within, quote unquote, legal? Example, attorney versus non-attorney roles that sales reps should understand. Stacy, maybe I'll go to you first on that one. Can you kind of clarify some of those roles and responsibilities that exist within legal?
Yeah. So I think, again, it's going to vary on your company because every legal department, depending on the size of the company, depending on where your company is at in its growth phase, it's going to look super different. You could have, a general counsel, a chief legal officer. You could have an assistant general counsel. You could have corporate counsel. You could have all of these counsel roles that are going to be an attorney role. And then you can also have kind of your paralegals, contract managers, legal operations, which, more non-attorney roles, but just as helpful and important as a legal team. Really oftentimes holding up the legal department, making sure they run smoothly. And so depending on what those roles are and what they do is really going to vary by company department. Some teams may have, their paralegals take first pass and give it to the attorneys, very similar to where you can automate and have approved clauses for those contracts to go out without attorney review. That might be something that your legal department has said, okay, our contracts manager or our paralegals or our legal ops, they're going to run that. And then anything, at a certain threshold, bring to our counsel or bring to our GC. And so that's going to vary. I definitely would check in with your legal department at, what kind of contracts do I need to bring to who? And that's something that, either maybe that's automated within your system. Everything over a certain contract value goes to this attorney. Anything from this certain region goes to this attorney, or maybe goes to this contract manager. So it's definitely going to vary. And it really just depends on the size of your company and where you guys are at within your growth stage.
Yeah, great question and great answer from Stacy. Adam, anything you would add based on your experience with in-house teams?
I don't think there's much I could add as not being the one on the legal side. It's funny. I started my career in a big, giant public company, and Stacy, you touched on something I haven't even heard about in a long time. We had contract managers where, if it was below a certain threshold, legal wasn't involved. The contracting team, took care of it. When it hit a different threshold, exactly, it would go to a paralegal and et cetera, et cetera. I think it varies. Like in startup land, like I've been legal, and trust me, I'm not remotely qualified to be legal. But it was same thing. If it's below a certain threshold, we don't want to spend the money to go to outside counsel. Whereas if it's things such as liability, et cetera, well, now we're going to go ahead and, get outside counsel. I think it really depends. But it should be, I would argue it's my job as a sales leader to make sure that that's very clearly documented for my sales team. And hopefully we have a great tool, I might know one, that automates all of this appropriately. So it's not, this guessing game of looking at a spreadsheet.
Yeah, that's great feedback. I want to go back to Stephanie's question, unless Stacy, there was any other insight you wanted to add there. Okay, so Stephanie, I didn't forget you, I promise. Stephanie asked Adam specifically, have you used MAPs to manage the process or expectations during the sales process?
You should always, let me say it again, always use a mutual action plan. I think it's important that you do it from the beginning. Again, this goes to having that conversation with your buyer, really understanding what their process is like and what your process is like, and making sure that you have this mutual, I prefer the term mutual success criteria versus mutual action plan, but really understanding that we are both working towards these specific milestones. These are the SLAs and the timelines that we have put in place to ensure that we achieve them. And it starts by what I said earlier, tying to that key business initiative, tying it to value. And Rachel, what is the date that you want to have this in place? Great. It's June 27th. Do you want to have it by October 1st? Based on our normal SLAs and your normal SLAs, we got to get to work. So let's figure out how to do it together, and let's be partners versus this, buyer versus seller, because it is a partnership, and that's how it's going to work best.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. We want to ask a question to the audience again. So Gina will help me out and post this question in the chat. But we'd love to hear what you're currently doing. What's your hack? What's your secret that is helping you to improve collaboration and communication between sales and legal right now? So we'd love for you to just drop your answers in there, and then we'll have Adam and Stacy share some of their advice as well.
Quiet group.
Listen, I'll tell you here, I used to be a high school teacher, so I am very comfortable.
No way.
Silence, waiting for the answers to questions. So jump in the chat, jump in the comments. I'm happy.
That's a whole separate conversation we have to have about that transition.
Yes, yeah, that
I'd imagine this is a much better job.
It is a lot of fun. I love Jessica's answer here. She says we use a legal ticketing system. So again, that visibility, that transparency across the RevOps to the legal ops, using a legal ticketing system. She says tied to Salesforce and email, so sales can always see status and stage. Very cool.
I don't see that in the chat.
Oh, that one popped up in Q&A. It looks like we've got it in both places. Deep said I try and use a single legal resource for all my deals, which helps me build rapport. Oh, I love building rapport is something we could talk about a lot. Get my deals prioritized. Leah says regular connection points, coffee chats, having them drop alternate clauses that are acceptable in red line situations, organizing three-way calls with legal and sales. Another one from John in the Q&A. Personally, I just try to outline timelines and expectations appropriately. I don't make it more urgent than necessary. So when it actually is urgent, I haven't cried wolf too many times. I love that piece of advice. Adam, is there, anything you would add to that?
That is probably the best one I've seen, because let me tell you, I, in early sales manager days, made the mistake of pissing off my legal team of like, Stacy, we got to get this done right now. The customer's ready to sign. It's really important that you review this. And 3 weeks later, the deal didn't get signed. There is, and legal agreed to everything. So, John, I appreciate that. Don't cry wolf, and, get your in-house counsel on the phone and make them drop whatever they're doing, because they do work on things other than sales deals. That, like, you got to stop what you're doing. I think, when you look at collaborating, there's a few things, right? It's understanding what you can do by yourself, what you can't. Align with your customer on how to get to yes faster. Eliminate that back and forth of, every time there's an ask, there's another ask. Get them all together. It's the same as negotiating in sales, right? You're negotiating with legal. Get all of your asks together at one shot and get them across, so you can kind of have that productive dialogue. And then just making sure that your team understands what legal is responsible for and what legal isn't responsible for. We've said it a gazillion times, but there's this misperception of it's with legal. It's not necessarily legal being responsible for it. And I wish that there were more ways to understand when a deal is pending, where it's actually sitting, legal, finance. I've had deals get stuck with marketing, with a clause that is, a logo being removed or a logo being added. Like, sure, it's legal, but it's ultimately marketing's decision. Like, how bad do we want this logo? So there's lots of things that I think, you need to look at to improve that collaboration. But I love the idea of not crying wolf.
Yeah. I think that's such a good metaphor for this experience. Stacy, I'm curious on the idea of building rapport, on the ideas of coffee chats. How effective do you feel like that is from a legal perspective?
So great. I love it. Because we do, end of month, end of quarter, we have a sales and legal sync. I want to go through what are the open deals, what can I expect to see by end of month, end of quarter, and then help me prioritize. Because, what is the actual, percentage that this is actually going to close? Because I don't want to go ahead and spend majority of my time on a deal that you're hoping will close when there's a deal that has a much higher chance of closing. So we have our weekly syncs, we have our end of month, we have our end of quarter, but let's make sure we're on the same page of what do you need by me? And then when are you going to need it by? And then make sure that I have a priority list from you. So I know which one to go ahead and execute first, which one should I be putting ahead of the rest, especially when we're down to end of month, end of quarter. So as far as those, whether that is an email that goes out, I think it's great if you can hop on a call with your team. My day is full of meetings with sales and with legal and with other departments to just hop on a call and chat with them. But I think those meetings are super helpful. I think another way to kind of build that rapport is give your sales team visibility onto where that really means. And so in our system, we have a status update. Every task, every contract that's coming from sales, you're going to see the status as, is it really with legal? Is it with me or our, CLO or with our legal ops person? Is it with business review? Does that mean somebody maybe in our T department is reviewing it, or maybe it's still being negotiated? Is it with finance? Is it with counterparty? Is it out for signature? So you're going to be able to go into our system and actually see my contract is with finance. I should go bug my finance person, not my legal person. Or is it with counterparty for signature? I should go email them. Hey, did you get our, DocuSign request? Let me know if you need me to resend. So that way sales has like really good visibility into where the contract really is, not just under this with legal umbrella.
Yeah, I love that. And when Stacy says our system, as Lexion, we do use Lexion as our system, but there are other ways that you can replicate this status visibility in order to see what stage of the funnel it really is in. I do have to ask Stacy, so sounds like from your answer, the Starbucks gift card is not as meaningful as it just is visibility or communication. Is that fair to say?
Well, I do love Starbucks. That is, my kids love their K-Pops every morning on the way to school. Unfortunately, that's, not going to push me really any faster to, if you give me a business reason of why that's a priority, that's probably going to go ahead. I had a thing that, on every question, if you need a contract done faster than our usual SLA, I need a business reason why, probably tied to one of the company goals. So, or, I need approval from your manager, push this above the rest. So if you're wanting me to expedite your contract, there's got to be a really solid reason, probably a little bit more important than a Starbucks gift card for me to expedite your contract.
Thank you. I appreciate the candor. That's really helpful. Adam, do you feel like you've seen the same when trying to build rapport with legal teams?
Yeah, it's it starts early, right? You can't just try to build rapport when you need to get that deal through. Like if I've never said a word to Stacy and I suddenly have a deal that I need to push through, and now I want to be Stacy's best friend, it's very self-serving. I think the deal reviews are crucial, and I think just like we spoke about with the tying your sales back to a business need, when you're building that relationship and you're asking for exceptions, it's don't make legal jump through hoops. They're legal. Like they know the way things need to be and not be. Like you're not gonna like pull the wool over their eyes. You gotta build that rapport organically. And you have to, it's give and get, right? I think one of the things that's really important is if I'm asking for an exception, what do you need from me, Stacy, to make your life easier when I put this in front of you and ask you to skip the line? What is everything you need to be able to give me a yes or a no? Because if you're going to put this in front of everything else, I want to make sure that your time is well spent and that you don't have to come back and look at it again later.
Yeah. Those are super helpful. Being able to know, hey, we're going to ask for red lines that we don't typically have approval for. Maybe these are an exception. These are special terms. Knowing that, send your approval from, your boss, the CEO, whoever gave you that approval to do that, send that with your request to me. Don't make me go chase that approval of, hey, you're asking for these payment terms. We generally don't do that. So now I need to go figure out if somebody approved that. Bring that approval to me in advance. Let me help me speed up that process. So that's all greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I love that. I think especially this week, it's end of quarter for many folks. I love Adam, the call out to like, hey, start early in building that trust. Is there anything, Adam or Stacy, that you think specifically right now teams should be doing to improve that collaboration between sales and legal?
Specific to end of quarter. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
I'd say bring things to legal early. So, and last week of end of quarter, we're in a tight space right now. But things that you were hoping to get done this week, I would have hoped you at least gave me a heads up about last week. Let me be able to kind of strategize my calendar and the rest of my, workload, knowing that I probably don't just support the one person in sales. Help me understand what can I expect this week as last week of end of quarter, end of month. So if you know that, hey, next week I'm expecting about 5 deals to come in, I'm hoping that's going to happen, give me a heads up so I can help prioritize and like plan around the rest of my week to get those done to support you.
Yeah, I love that. Just the heads up, maybe the week before even, like, hey, I'm going to drop 5 deals in. And to Adam's earlier comment, I've done all the prep work to make sure that they're easy to move through. Adam, what were you going to add?
Even with that, I think, the biggest thing I've seen that makes end of quarter successful is the simple not waiting till end of quarter. When you send that initial quote out to the customer, like when you first start talking about price and there's a vested interest, that's when the legal conversation should start happening. There's nothing wrong with telling your customer, I'm going to go over and send over our normal T's and C's. Let's get ahead of the legal process. Before we even finish the sales process, let's get ahead of it. Have your team look at it. I'll have my team look at it. That way, once we align on everything else, that minutia is done. And we're not waiting on your legal or our legal to go back and forth, because I'm sure your counsel is doing lots of other things besides approving purchases as well.
Yeah. Great advice. And I love the message. I think it mimics what it looks like Chris added in the chat, is that rapport building, whether it's in your internal relationship with sales and legal or with a customer's legal team, this should be something that is the norm for all teams, right? I love that call out to culture. Like, let's create organizations that streamline contract management just because of that culture of trust and that speed of trust that is created by the business expectations. I love that. We've got one more question that I want to ask to these panelists, and then I'm going to open it up to this group here to ask any questions as well. So feel free to start dropping those questions either in the Q&A or directly in the chat. But I want to get really tactical here and talk about any tools, technology, specific processes that you are using to integrate sales and legal and to get those deals to the finish line faster. So Stacy, maybe I'll go to you first. Tools, technology, what are your recommendations?
Obviously, at Lexion, we use Lexion. Makes it very easy to talk to customers as in-house. I use the product. I'm able to kind of talk to, this is how I would do it. This is how I would, see it helping your company. But I think internally, what I love most about it was first the visibility to sales. I don't have sales, at home now, but before coming to my desk, slacking me, messaging me, hey, where's my contract? They easily have that visibility to see it's with counterparty, it's with finance, it's with IT. They know they shouldn't need to come to me to ask where's my stuff at. But I think the second best part about it is the automation. So we're a small legal team. We don't, legal's not really getting a lot of funding to go, hire new people. We're not growing as sales grows. So to be able to continue to support a growing sales team, we need to take less off our plate and kind of automate a lot more of our processes. So I have our intake form that, depending on the contract value, if it's over a certain dollar value, it automatically sends an approval to my finance team to go ahead and approve the deal. It automatically kind of will loop in our sales manager on every deal that his sales team is involved in. It'll automatically ask, hey, you're asking for a security questionnaire. Do you have an NDA? If not, it's automatically going to populate it for the sales team that they can handle all of that on their own and really only bring me in when necessary.
Yeah. And I love echoing that sentiment of trust. Like, let's build that collaboration. Let's build that trust between the teams. And often visibility and automation is the way we do it. Adam, what else would you add?
That is it. It is having the tool that talks to your other tools, right? I have used other platforms that don't sync with Salesforce. You can't get a Slack notification. You can log in and all you see, Stacy, is with legal, with customer. It doesn't tell you the story. And what that does is create 27 Slack messages back and forth. You have to have a clean and friendly UI. You have to have visibility for your team. And then ultimately you want those automations and those integrations. Stacey, I love what you said about the NDA. It's pretty standard in every sales process to have an NDA. It should, based on sales stages, have it go out immediately, get signed, and it immediately pops into your legal system without a sales rep having to upload it or email it to legal and send, like, all these things that we've had to deal with. When you look at tools like Lexion that do that, it makes not just legal's life easier. Like, yes, it's a legal software you're selling, but if I'm managing sales for Lexion, like, I'm talking about how it's going to make my team's life that much easier as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Let's jump to the Q&A. Looks like John already has shared a question. Feel free, folks, to add your questions as well, either for Adam or Stacey or both. But John asked if there are any strategies or tactical differences you would share when working with customers in-house legal versus if they use outside counsel. So any strategies, any tactical differences when working with in-house versus outside?
I think kind of as your in-house legal, then, representing that. For me, not so much, because again, I'm still probably going to send it to my sales rep, who's going to then send it to their contact, who then would send it to their in-house, or if they have the authority, send it directly to their outside counsel. And so I think if somebody's having an outside counsel, that's really more on them to know. I'm not as kind of in the loop on whether they're using outside counsel or if they have somebody in-house. But however, again, I think it's very helpful to know that as soon as legal should connect, whether that is their in-house counsel or their outside counsel, being open to hopping on a call and talking through those red lines.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes you don't know, right? Like, you don't know if they have in-house counsel or if they have external counsel. The only thing I would be aware of is if they have external counsel, like, know that, and know that every request you go back and forth with is costing them money because they are having to pay outside counsel by the hour. So take that into consideration of, like, again, let's get all of this done in one shot so that we could make the most productive use of your counsel's time and our counsel's time, because you're paying $5, $6, however many $100 per hour.
And truthfully, that applies whether it's in-house or not, right? Everyone's time is valuable. So any way that we can streamline that is going to be better for their business, and thus more likely to lead to a customer. I love that. Strategies for approaching NDAs or similar agreements. Customer says mine, vendor says no, use mine. Time is often wasted. How can sales best work with legal to minimize time spent deciding whose doc is the starting point?
I'm going to defer to Stacey and the legal advice, because my sales answer would be, I don't care whose paper it's on, and NDA is an NDA, but that's might not be the right answer. So
Yeah, and again, it's going to vary by department. It's going to be your legal team's kind of choice on really, how much are we putting up a fight on what do your terms look like? NDAs are generally pretty common. Hopefully, you might have some clauses that are a little bit more unique to your business and your industry. If I'm the seller, I want to get the deal done. I'm not going to let this be a stall. I'll take your red line. Know though that if you sign my paper, that's probably much faster. Now I have to review your paper. So I'd work with your legal team on, how hard do you push back of, no, we really like our terms. But, having that, open communication with your legal department on, hey, if they say, we want to use our paper, how much do you want me to push back? And, taking a look at their paper too, and just getting that over to your legal team as soon as possible. I think that is also really helpful, getting it to them early. If they're going back and forth, make sure as soon as they say our paper, just get it to your legal team so they can have a quick glance at it to see, yeah, this is great, or like, no, this isn't going to work. So just stay in open communication with your legal team about what their priorities are.
I love that. I think that kind of leans into this next question from Drew and kind of ties back to that boy who cried wolf scenario. He asks, how do I prioritize which tasks to send to legal? Sometimes I have a bunch of things come in all at once, and I'm not sure which is considered a difficult task versus an easy task for legal to work through. So how can we better help Drew prioritize those tasks?
I would say let legal decide which is easy or hard. But if it's something that legal has to do, just get it all over to us. But what we would want sales to help prioritize is which needs to get done first. So probably less on what's, an easy task versus a difficult task for us to work on, whether that means, hey, it's an NDA that has a few simple red lines that I can easily tweak, something like governing law, or is this, a 30-page agreement that this is going to take me a while to redline? So we'll worry about kind of that, but we need sales to tell us, hey, this deal is a priority, finish this one first. And so at the end of the day, we probably need everything, unless it's something we don't need to see. So I would give it all to us, but then help us prioritize which needs to be done first.
Yeah. Adam, any recommendations for prioritization?
Agreed 100%. Send it all to legal. Like Stacy said, the only thing that I would clarify, like in emails I'm sending, is like, hey, this deal has a higher likelihood of closing. This deal is more important. So regardless of whether this has 3 legal items or 27 legal items, please look at this particular client first, and then let you kind of prioritize what item in the legal plethora of things needs to be looked at first.
Yeah. As I'm getting, emails and tasks in even this morning where, we're Tuesday, end of month, end of quarter is going on end of this week. I'm asking my sales reps, hey, is this a deal that you expect to close, or is this something for next month? Because that's going to help me prioritize. Am I moving stuff around and shifting? And am I doing that today? Am I doing this tomorrow? Or can this wait till next week because I have other stuff that needs to be done this week? So that level of kind of information is super helpful. Of, no, I'm giving you this security questionnaire, but I actually don't need it because it's a July deal. So don't worry about doing it this week.
Yeah, that's great context. Next question comes from Kevin. What actually happens when a deal goes into legal review? Let's shed some light. Let's open up the abyss a bit.
Oh, a very, very standard legal answer. It depends. It really depends on what it is and what your department looks like. It's going to vary. Is that an NDA? And I'm going to glance through it and see that, my rules that I definitely need, my governing law, my, all of these things, they look good to me. I'm going to just, kick it over. This is good for signature, send it back to sales. Is this a complex agreement that I have to go through and, red line? Is it first party paper? Is it third party paper? There's so many different kind of variations on what this looks like. And that kind of workflow, it's going to vary by department and by contract. So whether that is, it has to go to a finance review and then a, IT review, maybe those reviews happen in tandem. Maybe legal has to agree to all of the, legal clauses before it gets to finance. That really depends on your company. So there's going to be different workflows per different contract per company. And I would just kind of have that conversation. It's really helpful to know that, hey, if I'm sending over an order form, first thing that needs to happen is it needs to have a finance review prior to being signed off on. Or if hey, I'm sending over this NDA and it's third party, my legal can, take a look at this. No one else is involved but legal. What they'll do is they'll send it for signature, or is their process to send it back. So I would definitely have that conversation with your legal department to know what does their internal workflow look like.
Yeah, great advice. Adam, anything else?
Not a thing on that.
It's like opening up a can of worms.
That is how the sausage is made. I'm not in that kitchen.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left, so we've got time for maybe 2 more questions. Feel free to drop them in the chat. One I'm seeing here from Heather: how do I build credibility and then maintain credibility with legal?
Ooh, from a sales perspective, I think it's open and honest, right? Like you can't, legal can't fix what they don't know. Legal can't fix lies, and it happens. Like if you think there's going to be a problem, if you think there's going to be pushback, let your legal team know that early. If something has been said to you other than what is in an email or a document that's gone back and forth, make sure that you let your legal team know. Legal's there not just to protect the company, but to protect you and to make sure that the deal gets signed as quickly as possible. And to do that, you know, they need to have the entire picture from my point of view.
Yeah. Thank you. Stacey?
Yeah, all spot on. I would just say communication. That's really it. There's kind of, you know, not a lot more you can do than communicate with us. If you know something's happening, or if you know, hey, they told me that they never sign, you know, for their third party paper, they're only going to want to do it on their paper. Give me that information early. Give me information that you have as early as possible, so I can work with you to strategize how we can help. I think bringing legal into the conversation earlier, whether that's you know, their legal or our legal, giving them the paper to review, but also if you know that they're going to have certain things that they need to agree to, bring that to my attention early so I can help strategize on how we need to work around that going forward. So communication is key.
Yeah, love it. Thank you. Well, I've got one final question for our panelists. And I just want to give you a chance to wrap up in 1 minute or less. What's your big takeaway, the thing you hope everyone leaves this session with? So 1 minute or less. Adam, I'll go to you first. What is your best tip for simplifying contract negotiations and getting to that yes faster?
It goes back to setting the urgency from the beginning. I think when you are on the sales side working with your customers, when you talk about mutual action plan or mutual success criteria, very early in the sales process, aligning on what's going to be needed from both sides to get the deal forward, getting that information over to your team as clearly, as concisely, and as quickly as possible. And then, like we talk about with everything else, make sure everything is documented so that no one is second guessing.
Love it. 1 minute or less. You did it. Stacey, you're up. What's your best tip for simplifying contract negotiations?
Just know that legal is on your side. We are not here trying to be a deal blocker. I remind my sales team regularly, we win deals as a team. And so know that looping us in, it's, you know, you're not in trouble. We want to be involved. We want to help you. You know, we win as a team, we lose as a team. Legal does not want to be the reason we didn't hit quota, that because, you know, we blocked a deal. We want to help you succeed as much as you do. So just know that we're on your side.
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to invite Adam and Stacey, if you wouldn't mind just dropping your LinkedIn into the chat so that folks can connect with you if they would like, if they have more questions about the legal perspective, the sales perspective, about anything related to this topic of contract negotiations. Thank you, both of you, for sharing your knowledge and insight with us. We hope that each of you today has learned something new about how to simplify contract negotiations, how to get legal on your side, how to get to that yes faster. And if you want to connect with any of us or learn more about Lexion, please reach out. Thank you guys. Have a great day.